I'll cue up this minor threat video. Seems appropriate. Okay, time for another edition of Self-Help with Papa Finn. And today, I want to talk to you guys about something, I guess, a little bit more serious than I usually talk about, which is why I stopped doing drugs and drinking. You may have heard me talk about this before, and I'll keep it short. But to make a long story short, I come from a family full of addicts. My mom was an alcoholic. Because, like I talked about in some of my other videos, she had a horrible childhood. You know, her parents died, and then her brother killed himself, and she got raped and all this awful stuff. So because of that, you know, she became an alcoholic later in life, which is totally understandable. I completely get it. I'm not judging her for it, but it made her pretty difficult to be around and caused a lot of problems. I mean, she was married 4 times. I have 2 stepdads, but one of them and 2 of his brothers went to prison for selling heroin. My other uncle on the other side went to prison for selling drugs in the 90s. My other stepdad, the person who called my dad, never did time or anything like that, but he was like a junkie and stuff in the 70s and 80s. And like, I don't know, it's kind of heavy stuff for me to like deal with. Like, I went to this hippie store with my dad when I was in like 7th grade or something. And at this time, he was a corrections officer. He got clean and all that stuff. But, you know, he was bad enough that he was like shooting speedballs in his neck and stuff. But he was clean by this time. And we went into this hippie store. He's kind of looking around and they're like, oh, can I help you, sir? Because they called him sir because he looked like a normie then. And he was like, oh, no, I'm good. My brothers and I, this used to be like an abandoned building. And my brothers and I used to go shoot up upstairs here. When I was in college, I just was curious what this place looked like now. And they're like, oh, okay, well, let us know if you need anything. And so I grew up around all this stuff, just like basically surrounded by addicts my whole life. One of my earliest memories also was like, I was like maybe 4 or 5 or something. I remember us having to like go to the hospital and her best friend was in the hospital because I think her liver was failing or something like that. And she like died of liver failure that night. And I just remember my mom crying about it. My stepsister died of an OD when we were 20. She's like basically the same age as me. She got hooked on Oxy somehow or another. Well, I know why, because her dad was an abusive piece of shit. And so she got hooked on Oxys, and Oxys are really hard on your liver. So the point I want to make here is that I grew up just surrounded by, you know, drug addicts and alcoholics my entire life as a child, and all of that stuff seemed pretty normal to me. But unlike a lot of people who grew up around that stuff, I never got into it. Like when I was in high school, I was straight edge. I never even wanted to like experiment. I think like I took 1 sip of beer when I was like 5 years old or something. And I was like, ew, this is disgusting. Beer is the worst thing in the world. Who would ever want to drink this? And I was just never interested in any of that stuff. I got drunk on my 21st birthday. I stopped being straight edge and I went to this bar with a friend of mine on my 21st birthday and I got not even drunk. I had like 2 or 3 beers or something. I got like tipsy and I was like, oh, this is pretty fun. But throughout my 20s, I still barely drank, like a little bit. But, you know, probably I got drunk less than 10 times in my 20s. Until I was like 28 or something like that. And then I got dumped by this girl that I was with at the time, and it was really hard on me. I took it really badly. Not her fault at all. It's like 100% on me, just to be clear. But I just sort of like, I don't know, just kind of lost it and went off the deep end. And I started, a lot of the people that I knew at the time were like partying a lot. And even though I swore that I would never be like my mom, you know, having this string of failed relationships and, you know, just partying, you know, I mean, by the time she was 30, she had me when she was 33, I think. And she'd been married 3 times, I think, then. And I was like, oh, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to have this string of failed relationships. I'm never going to, you know, drink. And lo and behold, I did. And I spent another like, you know, maybe 3 or 4 years or so just going real hard. I was drinking a lot and I was mostly into like Adderall and cocaine. I liked uppers. I don't know, like the worst, I did like 300 milligrams of Adderall in a day once. That's like the most I ever did. I stayed up for like 4 days without sleep and started seeing shadow people and like thought that there were like people in the army trying to like chase me down and kill me. And I was like, oh shit, this is not good. I am going a little bit too hard on this. And so I had a few other experiences like that where I kind of decided that it was time to pump the brakes. And I'm glad I did because, you know, this was like the first time I did cocaine was like 2008 or 9 or something like that. And the last time I did it was probably like 2012, I think. And these days that stuff is all laced with fentanyl and it could kill you. Yeah, shadow people is a good indicator that you went hard. Yes, it is. Yeah, I was going pretty hard, harder than most people, but I was able to quit very easily. Like I literally quit overnight, never like had any interest or desire to go back. And I will tell you how. And I'm not saying that this is going to work for everybody because it probably won't. One thing to understand is that I would not call myself an addict. I just did a lot of drugs and drank a lot because I was unhappy and I wanted to do something to take my mind off of my unhappy life. And so for me, I was able to quit like literally overnight. And I'll tell you why. At the worst of it was when I lived in Columbus. I lived in Ohio and I hated my job. I worked for Abercrombie and Fitch at the time as a designer. I did design and I did marketing, and it was an absolutely awful, toxic place to work. I hated my job. Everyone there was just a complete fucking asshole. I was in a really dysfunctional, bad relationship with somebody who, you know, she had a lot of problems. God bless her. I have nothing bad to say about her, but it was a really dysfunctional, fucked up relationship. And so I had this horrible job that I hated. I had this awful relationship that like made me want to die. So because of that, I basically just would use as many drugs as I could to just like take my mind off of it. How old was I at this time? I'm like 31 to 33, which is way too old to be acting like this. But I realized I don't really have like a drug problem. I have a life problem. So I took myself out of this situation. I left that job. I left Ohio. I left that relationship and I drove across the country here, moved back here to Seattle where I'm from. And literally the day that I left Ohio, I lost all desire to do any of that stuff. That I just ever since, I mean, I've had a couple drinks here and there, but I'm just like, I don't want to drink. Like I would drink if I wanted to. I just don't want to. There's a couple lessons here that I want to kind of take away here. And again, I'm not saying that what worked for me will work for you by any means, but I'm just going to share a couple lessons for me because they might help someone else. Number one is that when you're doing drugs, when you're drinking, when you're living that lifestyle, it's only a matter of time until something bad happens to you. Basically, if you play with fire long enough, you're going to get burned. Whether that means getting pulled over by the cops and you've got something in your car that you shouldn't have, like a fucking 8-ball of cocaine, or you're going to get robbed, or, you know, like buying drugs is like statistically one of the most dangerous things you could do, buying or selling drugs. You know, I'm buying fucking a baggie full of Adderall from some sketchy ass dude that I've never met before that definitely has a gun. You know, you could get robbed, you could get caught in the crossfire or something. It's only about like, I mean, this is how my uncles ended up in prison. You know, they got caught, they bought a bunch of heroin and drove it from California up to Washington, and they got caught along the way and they ended up in prison because of it. They're felons, you know? So number one, if you have managed to get away with this lifestyle so far, quit while you can, because it is only a matter of time until fucked up shit happens. You know, you get someone pregnant, you get herpes, you get arrested, like it's only a matter of time. It is going to happen. So pump the brakes while you still can. And trust me, without exception, bad shit will happen to you if you're living this way. Okay. So if you've gotten away with it so far, you know, cross your lucky stars and decide that today is going to be the day that you stop, or that you start making a change. Number two is to understand that for most people, you know, you're not born with the desire to do drugs. Like it's not like some alien inside you that's like forcing you to do this. It's a response to something else, you know, typically some kind of like trauma, whether it's, you know, childhood abuse or mental health or something like that. So you need to understand what is making you act this way. And I would suggest, I've never gone to like, I went to AA with my mom. So my mom got sober when I was like a little kid, and I went to a lot of AA meetings with her and stuff. So I never went to AA meetings for myself because I don't really ever think I was an alcoholic, but I did go with her, and AA saves a lot of lives. They will help you break through. The hardest part of this is admitting to yourself that you have a problem. But once you have done that, you need to understand why you act this way, and then you need to take yourself out of those circumstances. So for me, I had to move because all the people that I knew in Ohio, pretty much, not all of them, but the vast majority of the people that I knew in Ohio were like fuck ups and addicts. And I knew that if I was hanging out with them, like if you think you can hang out with a bunch of like addicts and you can be sober around them, that's fiction. It's not going to happen. If everyone else is drinking, if the other like 10 people around you are drinking, you're going to do it eventually too. It's going to happen. You are not going to be able to resist that lifestyle long enough. Okay. So you need to make a clean break from all of those people. And that's what I did. So I realized that I didn't really have like a drug problem. I had a life problem. And so I had to fix my life. When it comes to like getting clean and getting sober, you need to look at it holistically. It's not just like, oh, if I stop drinking, everything in my life will be okay. That's not the way it works. You probably need to work on your entire life, which is scary. It's tough. It's not easy. It's hard fucking work. It's brutally hard, and it's probably not going to happen overnight. But what's the alternative? The alternative is literally you will die. That is the alternative. You need to understand there's only one way that this plays out if you're one of these people that has a problem. I'm not saying like, of course, for the majority of people, you can have a couple drinks here and there and it's like not a problem. You know, I get that. But I'm saying if you're someone that has a problem, moderation is not an option for you. Okay, so you need to understand that it's going to potentially mean rebooting your whole life, but it will be worth it. I promise you. It could be really hard, but I promise you it will be worth it. And no matter how fucked up you think you are, there's someone else that is more fucked up than you that's done it. Okay, so there's no such thing as a lost cause. You are not a lost cause, no matter how hard it is. There is somebody that has had it even harder than you and they did it. And if they did it, you can do it, and they will help you do it too, because people who have gotten clean want to help other people. Okay. One day I had enough, reached out to an out-of-state family member and asked if I could stay with them, and made that clean break. Thankfully, I had support and the mindfulness to know I had to make the clean break and get out. Sometimes that's what you got to do. Like, desperate times call for desperate measures. The main point that I want to make here is that this is literally a matter of life and death. And I'm not like, I can't say what is going to work for you personally, because everybody is different. What works for me is not going to work for everyone else. But what I can say is that this is a literal matter of life and death. And if you have a problem, you know it. You may not be willing to admit it to other people, and that's okay. But you know it in your heart of hearts. You know that you have a problem, and you know that you need to make a change. And the sooner you make that change, the better you will feel. Like, I would encourage you to do something today, like literally today. If you're wondering what the first step to make is, I would say, look up the AA or NA meeting in your town. There's one in every town. There's meetings everywhere. Check it out. Maybe you don't like AA. If you don't, that's okay. It's not for everybody, but I'd say that's a good place to start. At the very least, if you have the option to go to therapy, do that. Like, just understand that this is life and death, and it may take a while, but there is light on the other side. It's been 10 years now. I mean, I'll have a glass of wine once a year or something like that, but it's basically been 10 years since I did any of that stuff. And it feels like another lifetime. Like, when I was doing that stuff, I felt like I was a piece of shit. I felt like I was always going to be this way, and like there was no hope for me. And, I felt like I was just destined to like burn out and be one of these like just sad losers. I felt like that was the only option for me. But somehow I at least had the strength and presence of mind to like pull myself out of it. I didn't know that it would work, but 10 years later, my life is great. I make way more money than I ever thought I would. I own a nicer house than I ever thought I would. My wife and I have been married for 4 years. We've been together for 10 years. We just had a baby. Like, my life is good now. It's great. Do I notice a change in mood? Yeah, of course. Like, I wanted to fucking die every day for fucking years. I sometimes like secretly hoped that something bad would happen to me and that I would die. Like, I would be like, I don't know. I realize this is probably going to kill me, and oh well, who cares? Was sort of how I felt about it. And I don't feel that way anymore. So the message that I want to send is that it's not going to be easy, but it is possible, and you can do it. Don't assume that what I did will necessarily work for you. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but like, there is a path for you. I don't know what it is, but there is a path for you. And if you start today, you're going to feel better. I guarantee that. So I hope that helps you. Hope that helps someone out. And, just don't give up. That's the real message. Don't give up. There is hope. The most fucked up people in the world have done it. You can do it too. That's the real point.